let me introduce my guest for this morning's discussion of the two biggest issues concerning our health, our lives in COVID, and also whether or not the stage is set for the 2020 elections with the choosing of Professor Naana Opoku-Agyemang as a running mate to John Dramani Mahama. My guest this morning, Abdul Malik Baku, Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, our regular panelist, Joyce Bawa Mukhtari. She is special aide to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And on Zoom, we'll be joined by Esla Owusu Ekofu, who is MP, Ablekuma West constituency and Minister of Communications. We will be discussing. Thank you very much for joining us. I see that you have already joined us. Thank you. Right. We will be joined on the issue of the COVID-19. Dr. John Amwesi, who is Lecturer, Global Health Department, School of Public Health, KNUST, and leader, Global Health and Infectious Diseases Research Group at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research into Tropical Medicine, KCCR. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Right. So, this is how the announcement came about. Let's check how Professor Naana Opoku-Agyemang got introduced to us, and a couple of statements that have been made about her selection, and then we'll return to the studio for the discussion.
What is the choice the flag bearer is making for his running mate?
As you may be aware, the flag bearer of the NDC just had a meeting with the National Executive Committee of the party to consult us on its choice of running mates for the 2020 general elections. And that is in line with the constitution of the party, like I've already said. The consultation has taken place. Earlier, he had consulted members of the Council of Elders of the party who had given their support for his choice of running mates. At the next meeting we just had, there's been a unanimous approval of the National Executive Committee of the choice of running mate by the flag bearer. And so I can tell you that the running mate of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama for the 2020 general election is Professor Naana Opoku-Agyemang. That choice has been approved unanimously by the party. We are certain in our minds that this is the winning ticket. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, ably supported by the competent, trustworthy, honest, sincere, matured Professor Naana Opoku-Agyemang, will deliver victory for the NDC.
Right. So Sami Jemfi is the communications director of the officer of the NDC, and after a closed-door meeting to select or announce the selection of Professor Naana Opoku-Agyemang, he had to meet with the press and now disclose that publicly. So Joyce, we start with you here. The impression you get listening to the NDC's communicators is that this is the winning ticket, as though she were the flag bearer.
Well, thank you very much, Samson. Good morning to you. Good morning, Mr. Baku, and good morning to Ursula, and of course, to all who are watching us. And I always say a shout out to my family and friends who are in Salaga South constituency in particular. Well, I'd like to say thank you for having me, and indeed, on this rather very auspicious occasion, we've had President John Dramani Mahama nominate his running mate, in the distinguished personality of Professor Naana Jane Opoku-Agyemang. Professor Naana is no guest, she's no visitor, she's really no neophyte. She's an individual who has distinguished herself in her own right. A scholar of many years, an educator of educators, a distinguished female leader with demonstrated and demonstrable leadership qualities. We sometimes forget that by the time Professor Naana Jane Opoku-Agyemang was nominated and confirmed as Education Minister, she had had an illustrious career as a trainer of trainers, as a teacher, as a lecturer, as the very first female vice-chancellor of a public university here in Ghana. She brings to this ticket a depth of knowledge and experience, leadership qualities of an uncanny kind, of a unique kind, a touch of wisdom and nativity, above all, deep, deep knowledge and passion for our development as a people. Something like all of us. We've managed our small firms, we've managed our small businesses as small entrepreneurs and all of that. This is an individual who has managed a huge institution, a full term of an unblemished, pristine approach to how she handles her duties. She's gone about her work with enormous passion, with a certain length of humility, a God-fearing woman, a Methodist, a mother, a grandmother, and everybody's teacher and friend. I believe that for many months now, consultations have been going on, very far-reaching consultations on who becomes John Dramani Mahama's choice of a running mate. Indeed, as I keep saying, the pendulum has swung many weeks and months. The guesses have been out there. Your guess is as good as mine. There were quite a number of females who made it on the list. But of course, President Mahama, in consultation with the party elders, in all our prayers, settled on Professor Naana Jane Opoku-Agyemang as his running mate. I believe that her nomination as Ghana's very first VP nominee of the largest and most successful opposition party, or party here in Ghana, is a toast to all of our calls for our women folk to serve at the highest levels of our national development. I believe that unlike most of these appointments that sometimes characterize or create a certain impression of tokenism, this is a woman who is more than qualified in her credentials, in her sterling qualities, in her demonstrable leadership qualities, and in how she has led her very own life. Unlike many people with talents such as hers, Naana chose a life of academia and became one of our greatest female academics of all time. She has led her life as she has led her career, leading many young people, empowering many young people. She is beyond your idea of a feminist because she has not just generated enormous empowerment for Ghana as a whole, but I believe that she comes also with some international repute. She has studied in many institutions of learning across the world. She has lectured and taught in equally many institutions. She's currently she's currently president of the Women's University in Zimbabwe. I do think that Naana's achievements are highly commendable.
Right.
I believe that it sets a tone for all of us, young women, young men, name it. You know, I would always tell you that my idea of a feminist has always been someone like my mother, who has educated, who has empowered, who has led many young women to very distinguished careers and lives, some of them even better qualified than she herself. I believe that on that table, Naana comes with a huge constituency.
We'll look at very many aspects of her selection, including what she brings to the table. She has issued an acceptance note and said that she will justify the honor done her. Now, And the first question I asked you, we will deal with that as well, why there appears within the NDC party to be a communication as though she were the flag bearer instead of a running mate. Let's hear from Esla Owusu-Ekufo. And Esla, the group that you have headed once before and you are still a member of, FIDA, sent in congratulatory messages. I have heard you also, express delight about what has happened. FIDA says that they find her to be a strong advocate for affirmative action law in Ghana. FIDA Ghana considers her appointment as a major step in getting more women in the top hierarchy in politics and national governance.
Thank you, Samson. And let me say good morning to all your viewers and listeners, to my constituents in Ablekuma West, and my relatives around the country in Oda, Esium, Brekum, and all the other places, right, including Adriamwa. And it's a pleasure to be on your show this morning. Samson, the movement to accord women the rightful place in governance has been long and hard and arduous, and we made incremental progress. However, we still have a very, very long way to go. I mean, if you look at the days of and I think Kweku can add a bit more to that, the development of our democracy here with the first 10 females appointed into parliament, the women who helped in the fight against our colonialists and the fight for independence, who have largely remained unrecognized, unsung, and their efforts not acknowledged. And I'm talking about Akwili Shoshosho, Dede Ashikinsha, and the others. But we've come a long way. And so as a women's rights activist, I'm delighted that a woman has been appointed as the running mate of the largest opposition party. I know the challenges that are in the political terrain. My heart bleeds a little bit for her. And that is why I made that public call that I'll urge everyone in discussing this nomination to focus on her track record, on what she brings to the ticket, and leave out the personalization and the insults, because that does not help anyone or advance the cause. Sometimes in our quest to advance the cause of our political party, we forget that there's a larger issue at stake and that we carry the weight of our agenda on our shoulders. And it's for me, we have done a great disservice to the women's movement in our selectivity in protecting women in public life who've been attacked. And I had issue even with FIDA at some stage, and told them that I felt that they had become too quiet and hadn't been as much in the forefront as we were known to be 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Right. Now it seems everybody has gotten busy. And so the issues that demand that we speak out, and organizations like that don't. And when we do that, some of us have stopped attending many of these meetings because when we were personally attacked, people chose to look at what was happening through partisan political lenses and applauded those who were attacked. There are certain lines that you do not cross. And I think I need to remind all of us as women's activists that there are certain lines that when you cross, you undermine the integrity of the work that we have been doing. And I've been doing this for the past 30 years. You undermine the integrity of all the effort that has been put in. And before we started, other giants, greats, had been working in this from the time of Anijage. I see us as the thin edge of the wedge. You're making space and making life a little easier for the next generation of women activists who would also continue with the struggle. We're not there yet. What does this mean, this appointment mean to the advancement of the cause? Now, you would have to look beyond the appointment of one woman to a particular position to see whether she's sitting on top of a structure that would help many more women get into that position. But the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So everyone who comes to this with the desire to do a little bit more to make life easier for the next generation of young people is welcome.
Right.
Now, like you rightly said, it's as if the NDC is marketing her as if she's going to make the difference to their candidature. She's not the one on the ballot. Let's not lose sight of that fact. And she cannot make up for the inadequacies of her flag bearer, who is the one who is going to the contest.
Okay.
So in all the excitement, it is as if the NDC themselves have given up on the strength of their flag bearer and are hoping that Professor Naana Opoku-Agyemang would be the one who would help them to win.
Okay.
You do have your work cut out for you, and it's not as easy.
So
it's not going to be as easy as.
Hold your thoughts there from that very, fabulous preliminary comments that you have made, which is clearly in sync with what you have campaigned and crusaded for the most part of your life, and for what some of us got to know you as Esla. Now, Kweku, this is not the first time a woman is being selected. So what is this thing about Naana Opoku-Agyemang partnering with John Mahama?
Well, yes, you're right. If you say that this is not the first time a woman is being made a running mate of a political party. Indeed, if I cast my mind back, maybe we've had about 7 or 8 in the Fourth Republic.
Right.
And then if you want to add Lieutenant Colonel Christian Deborah, who was running mate to R.P. Bafo the Great, he was then on an independent ticket in the Third Republic, I suppose. Yeah, I think so. Then we have about 9. So really, it's nothing new in that sense. But I hear my NDC friends make a point, and I think it was articulated in their press conference announcing the selection. They make a point about, indeed, this is a proud moment to be a member of the NDC, and for that matter, a Ghanaian, as for the first time in our Fourth Republic, one of the 2 most dominant political traditions has taken a bold step to shatter the glass ceiling and barrier to women involvement in the highest office of the land. So you see, they are conceptualizing, they are creating their own framework. The framework, and it's factual, though, is relative to the fact that they are talking of the 2 dominant political traditions. Yes, that's also, it's obvious. If you are talking of the 2 dominant political traditions that have ruled this country since the Fourth Republic, then this is the first. And so they believe they've done something. Why is that? Is a fact, and quite an exciting and interesting scenario for us to interrogate. It comes with also its challenges, in the sense, and was it the first time ever that he had opportunity to elevate a female to that status? I'm not too sure about that. In the countdown to the 2008 elections, there was some agitation and canvassing of support for Madame Betty Mould Drusu to be the running mate. And indeed, Mrs. Rawlings, who was then a key member of the NDC, went out of her way to launch a campaign. I got an interview she had with Radio Gold and everything here. And it didn't work. I'm not sure the issue of affirmative action or empowerment of women or elevation of women to that level was no issue then. It was still an issue. It's been an issue since the 1950s. So nobody can tell me that they were not ready for it. It didn't happen. To the extent that even Mrs. Rawlings herself, in this time not for running mate, but wanted to go for the highest. Of course, she was competing or seeking to upset a sitting president. It came with a lot of challenges. The party gave her about 3%. So within the context of the party itself, there was no groundswell acknowledgement of the need for a female to be promoted to that level. But having said all this, yes, we are in 2020. We're going for 2020 elections. The party, and in this case, it's more like the flag bearer. He does it and he brings it for endorsement. So we should also take that into consideration. Has decided to what? Shatter the glass ceiling and bring her forward. There are other points they made about the female factor in this thing. So I get the impression that, well, we are being invited to interrogate, not just because she's a female, but in this case, I'm restricting myself to the female, that consistency. What is it that we've done for that consistency over the years, or if you like, relative to the Fourth Republic? We are being told that this choice could inspire a further empowerment of that consistency. Question: we did necessarily attract her companions, the counterparts, female counterparts in terms of votes?
In the political front, this is very significant, isn't it? We have had, for example, the NPP at a point, we knew that Haji Ali Mahama was in, significant consideration, and then it didn't work. Like you mentioned, the NDC to Betty Mould Idrisu, then we knew that something went amiss, and then she lost the support that she was getting to be considered. In the state itself, by way of political appointments, we have done quite a lot for the women. We have had women chief justice, we have had women attorney generals, and women in ministerial offices like Esla herself, equally qualified to even be a running mate for her party. But to have a political party like the NDC make that decision, that must be very significant.
Yeah, well, the choice of words, but I think I will concede. I have said it's a smart move. I've said it's an exciting choice. That's what I have said already, meaning that it has some significance. How much value you put on the significance will be determined soon when we begin to look at the specifics. Okay? Because whilst I can see the NDC inviting us to look at the fact that, look, this is also a choice for women empowerment, a vote for women empowerment. We're not looking at her only because she's a woman. I think they will concede to that. We're going to look at her track record, professional track record. We're going to look at her political track record. You have to combine all those things to be able to...
So let's start there with you. She clearly was chosen ahead of other very competent, equally, strong people within the party. Kwesi Boche, we heard about Ewa Dakon, we heard about also even Kobna Dufo. These are heavyweights. She beat all of them to it. What do you think worked for her?
Well, that's why I said I'm looking at what the NDC self has put out there. And I have a sense that they decided that, look, let's bring this element of women empowerment, that a woman rising to that highest office. Of course, all the other ladies who were running mates, and this is without any disrespect to them, were solid women, women of integrity and everything, but their political platform was not that massive. So it didn't have the potential to materialize into an electoral victory, unlike the NDC's case. And I'm being very factual here, scientific, not allowing my personal biases to inform what I've, otherwise I would have said the unlikely situation of the NDC winning. But that's not, we're doing scientific analysis here, trying to be as much as possible objective. So yes, the potential in her case is there relative as compared to the other ladies who were made running mates, I'll concede. But you see, the paradox is this. Whilst they would want to court some votes or cultivate some, sympathy votes from that constituency, because Madam Opoku-Agyemang has been a minister of state before, responsible for education. I can see the education sector and issues to do with education coming to the fore.
Okay.
Almost inevitably. So I find it quite interesting. Whilst the NDC may have thought that, look, push the women empowerment factor to the fore, let's see what we can do, because yes, there'll be some women who would want to see a woman vice president. There will be some women. I didn't say all women. There'll be some women who will not bother about that at all. They're going for party. There are people who vote on party lines and other factors, not necessarily this one. But once you bring her forward and you seek to play the female factor, which I say don't underestimate. I don't underestimate it. Her profile, political profile, which goes even along with her professional profile because she's an educationalist, is the track record in office, the delivery of the Mahama administration relative to education, and her own role in that. It's so good. It's difficult to put a Chinese wall between her administrative, acumen or her professional handling of issues at the ministry and that of the Mahama administration.
So if you took her and decided to assess her achievements, her leadership track record, including having come into government and served as a minister, if you took her and pitched her against Dr. Bawumia, for example, which has been done, at the point of the selection of Dr. Bawumia and at the point of her selection, you could say that she's miles ahead of Dr. Bawumia at the point of selection,
well,
right?
Again, the adjective, miles ahead, that description may be debatable, but I think I get your drift. She's had 4 years of governance experience.
And before that,
in terms of the politics.
Before that,
what was she before that?
She's headed a university.
No, I was not talking the professional. I was looking at the political.
Okay.
After all, Bawumia too was a deputy governor of Bank of Ghana. But Bawumia had not had any political exposure, as far as I can recollect. Okay, so because you asked the question as to the first point of call when they were selected. Yes, in that sense, if you want to do a comparative thing, which is a bit tricky and shaky, not too well-founded, is that she had had 4 years as a Minister of Education, I think from 2013 to 2017, before becoming a flag bearer. Bawumia did not have that political exposure before becoming a running mate. Before becoming a running mate in Bawumia's case. But you see, we've passed that stage relative to Bawumia. He's been running mate twice or thrice. He's going to be the 4th. He's been a vice president for nearly to be 4 years by that time. So it's not easy to compare them in that sense. To be honest, there'll only be much grounds. But I'm saying that the track record in her ministry as Minister of Education necessarily will become the other side of the coin. When you play the female thing, let's elevate a woman to the office of vice president. Wow, it sounds really nice. Let's be honest. And then, this lady, fine, in my candid opinion, a decent woman, has a political track record, which is in the at the Ministry of Education. We examine that as well. So the two will go together. Yes. Apart from the fact that I have professional track record. But I doubt if there's any debate there, ought to be, relative to a professional track record as a vice chancellor, as educationalist.
Well, because of the encouragement and the, I will say, the caution and advice from people like Esla against a certain projection of certain issues, I'm a bit reluctant, but we still have to deal with the issue. So we'll come back and look at the issues raised by the NPP's, Director of Communications, the majority leader in Parliament, about her and how people have interpreted all of those comments. But Joyce, if you can address that question, how did she, with not as much political exposure and experience as all the other candidates, perhaps also with not, you know, a pocket to support the ticket.
I like that.
You know, beat all these guys.
Well, Samson, I am particularly delighted this morning that at least my senior Isla has actually changed her tactic. And it's actually heartwarming, and I must acknowledge that I'm particularly happy that she took this tone this morning.
You haven't followed her after the nomination. She's been chastising the party and all other people who have decided to be negative.
It is why I'm actually acknowledging that exemplary approach, really. You know, it is actually one of those very interesting questions that has been posed many times over. Beyond the fact that Naana Jane is a female, there's also the fact that of all the names that you've mentioned, she stands tall on qualification, on experience, and in her field of endeavor. I think she's one of the tallest, the very best you can find. So there's no competition really about her credentials for the job. That is not in doubt. I believe that Mr. Bako has actually underscored that.
Politically, those guys have the clout, if you like.
But you see, clout is relative, Samson. I may not be a political heavyweight, but I'm sure I have a certain clout with a certain crop of young people. You should see me on the Legon walk this morning. The kids stop over, oh, I didn't know it was you. You look so big on television. Oh, I didn't know it was you. So we all carry, to an extent, a certain clout within our areas of operation. But in Naana's case, she carries a clout locally, internationally, in politics, in academia. Note that the NDC in particular has always had this very beautiful collaboration and cohesion with academics. Right from the days of President Jerry John Rawlings, we had the late Professor John Evans Atta Mills as vice president and then as president. Subsequently, we've had the President Mills ticket with John Dramani Mahama. And now we have, in fact, we also had John Mahama with the late Vice President Mr. Arthur, who was himself an academic, a technocrat, an economist of some repute. So for Naana at this point, I think beyond the fact that she's female, she is all of these things encapsulated into one person. That she happens also to be a woman is just icing on the cake for all of us. But on her credentials, and all of us sitting here, we will envy that 54-page CV. She has a Juris Doctorate in law. She has 8 master's degrees in French, in English literature, in poetry. But in all of that, this is a woman who has found time to author many books, to even provide the University of Cape Coast. If you go there and you see how she utilized the talent in that enclave, you'd be impressed. As early as a young student in Wesley Girls, I call her Prof. Naana was a senior prefect. In all of our schools, we know, even our year group, our senior prefect is someone that much as was our mate, we hold her in a certain esteem. We see her in a certain light. So right from that age, she had a certain demonstrable leadership qualities, a certain magnanimity, a certain genuineness. And when you look at the example of Naana's own family, you would love to give your children to her, to lead, to mentor, and to educate. I think she brings a lot more than just the 51% of our society that is an embodiment of women.
3 children, all with PhDs.
Absolutely.
Is that the example you're looking at?
I would say there are many of these examples, as I said, but this is her story. You understand? There are many people, there are even persons who are not even within our formal sector who have raised children of equal measure. But when you look at Naana's life, it is a life of positivity, a woman who brings to the ticket this level of experience, this maturity, a certain safe pair of hands beyond being female. And look, there is enormous value in the goodwill that she carries. It beats money any day. I started by telling you that, like all of us, Naana could have chosen a path of corporate Ghana, utilize her talents there for personal aggrandizement. Unlike all those who chose the corporate ladder, she chose to remain in academia. And you should meet some of her students.
So central in her selection.
Central in her selection
is to get credibility for your tickets.
No, She brings enormous credibility to the ticket. She's trustworthy. She brings a certain leverage for both male and female. She brings also academia. Remember one thing I always ask people, the fact that there's been wide acclaim of her nomination is because I believe that, unlike any man, John Dramani Mahama is one of those men who would happily, willingly nominate a female vice president. We've had conversations around this table about President Akufo-Addo himself when he tried to nominate my English teacher, Haji Halima Mahama. He faced stiff opposition from within the rank and file of the party. Haji Halima Mahama, like Islosu, like Nana Jane, can stand on their own right to run for president of Ghana, of any country for that matter. So that they bring strong credentials to any ticket should not be downplayed. But remember that President Mahama himself is a colossus, a man who has occupied practically each and every political space. And you see, when you listen to some of the criticisms sometimes, I'm happy that Mr. Bako has avoided those sorts of criticisms. Listening to the majority leader, for example, very disappointing.
We'll still look at them so that you can put them in perspective and respond to them
and to put it in proper perspective. You see, let's give credit where credit is due. It takes not just any man to go out there and pick out a female VP nominee. And on this occasion, remember, it's not also about tokenism. This is not a small political party trying to make inroads.
But your critics will say, you had this array of candidates, so to speak, but a good number of them come with a baggage. So Naana Opoku-Agyemang is the safest to pick.
Let me start from that point and take you to the next level. The Honorable Hannah Tete stands tall in all of our political conversations. Where is Hannah today after having served Ghana as trade minister and as foreign minister?
She was not in the mix of the...
Funny enough, she was always in the mix, and there was always Marietta Brewer, P.O.
Right.
You understand? For almost 2 years, as I said, we've had this conversation around John Dramani Mahama's prospective vice president and running mates.
I see.
And this is the basis for this point is that, listen here, this is a political party that can very easily form the next government. So going to nominate Nana Jane as VP is no mean achievement.
All right. Now, Ursula, yes, Naana Opoku-Agyemang may be someone who doesn't come with the kind of baggage that will bring problem to the NDC's ticket. You started to talk about credibility, and many have raised that issue as well. But is it not obvious that if Ursula were appointed or selected as the running mate to the NPP, any NPP candidate, the discussion will be elevated above that candidate, perhaps, but focused on Ursula?
Yes, Samson. The candidate's personal attributes, what she brings to the ticket, would always be part of the discussion. However, the impression being created that it's as if by her appointment she automatically would win the votes of all women is very, very, very far from being the truth. Or that by her appointment, the NDC has demonstrated its women-friendly credentials. It's also not supported by the evidence. And I'll explain. They have the opportunity to choose a female to lead their party. If they were indeed so enamored of women's empowerment, the opportunity presented itself for them to have a female as their flag bearer. They flatly rejected that opportunity and delivered her a miserable or very weak 3%, which was a clear demonstration that they rejected her candidature as a person and the gender she represented, her sex, the female side equation that she was bringing. And everybody knew Nana Konnedu's credentials when it comes to women's empowerment. We don't have to go down that way. If indeed within the NDC itself, they had an affinity, a desire to widen the space for women's participation in politics. They would have seized that opportunity then and done that. Let's say that maybe the time was not right. And so they probably feel that it's a better time now. But by giving Nana Konadu 3%, and not just that, but literally hounding her out of the party for even daring to aspire to lead the party, which eventually led to her forming her own party. That speaks volumes about the mindset of the party in terms of women's representation. They have space for more women in their leadership in terms of the executives. But there is one opportunity that they failed to seize, which I still fault them for when I have the chance to talk to them about it. When the NPP started on this, and mind you, the record is clear, when it comes to creating opportunities for to field more women at all levels, the NPP has always been the leader in that. When it comes to innovating and introducing policies that would create or assist more women to enter into and to stay in positions of authority, the NPP has done that. We've consistently had more women in parliament than the NDC has. The NPP introduced the 50% rebate on filing fees for female candidates, which all the other parties emulated. The NPP was the first of the two big political parties to attempt to have a woman as running mate. In 2008, when candidate Akufo-Addo nominated Haji Halima Mahama to be his running mate. Unfortunately, the National Executive did not accept it. But when it comes to creating opportunities for women to showcase what they have, I think Akufo-Addo stands head and shoulders above John Mahama any day. But that's a discussion we can have subsequently. Now, the point I wanted to make was that in 2016, when the NPP attempted to enforce this affirmative action policy for its parliamentary candidates and passed a resolution that only females should contest females, I thought that was an excellent opportunity for us to come together as women. And I have had an issue with the women's movement in this country, even long before then, but particularly at that moment, because we didn't see what was being attempted. If that had succeeded, we would have had even more women being fielded in the strongholds of both parties, who would only be contested by women. So we would have a clear opportunity to ensure that we have at least 50 women in parliament at any given time. The NDC women move, what's it? Women's Wing, watched silently while we were torn to shreds for even daring to suggest that. And none of the women's organizations in this country ever spoke in support of that concrete way of institutionalizing larger representation for women in parliament, until after there was a groundswell of public opinion against it, and the issue was almost like dead on arrival, before FIDA issued and WILDAF issued a very weak statement in support of it. On the morning that the National Executive and National Council of MPP was meeting to review the decision because it had met with public uproar. And I'm like, why don't we put our monies where our mouth is and actually see that some of these measures are bent or are targeted at creating more space for women's participation in politics? And then we just wait until the tide passes. I've also had an issue with them. They wait until 6 months to an election before everybody starts talking about, let's vote for women, let's vote for women. When you don't even have women on the ballot. How are they, who are they going to vote for? So it is too little, too late. But the NDC has to stand with the NPP women's activists to realize that it is not just a partisan political thing. We need to work collectively to push the frontiers for greater participation of women in political life. Otherwise, we are doomed to still deliver these same miserable results.
All right.
Currently, there are fewer than 50 female candidates, 24 for MPP, 23 for NDC. It's not likely that all of them will win their seats, even in the unlikely event that they all win their seats in Parliament. That's still what? 47 women in a 275-seat Parliament. I have no quarrels with the personal accomplishments of Naana Opoku-Agyemang, but she's sitting atop an organization which is not very friendly to women. And so she has her work cut out for her if she thinks that by her mere nomination, she's going to make any difference. And I have been also consistent in calling out both political parties because I think that it is a political culture in our country. It is not very friendly to women. We need to, I'm happy that this has brought up an opportunity for us to discuss this dispassionately. But women, even though we have numerical strength, that has never translated into political power at any level, from district assembly right up to the presidency. And so, yes, she may be all that and more, but she cannot show up the inadequacies of the ticket on which she is. And that ticket is led by John Dramani Mahama.
All right.
That is their main problem.
Okay, so I'll take a break here. When we return, we will interrogate her capacity and capability as potential vice president and president.
Quickly react to a few things.
We will take a quick break and return to interrogate that issue.